Hey CDA, and welcome back to Builderment, and I'm really enjoying this factory. I mean, look at this, it's extremely satisfying for some reason. I don't know why. I'm just happy to play a factory game again, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, today we're going to have to do some massive expanding because even though, well, we can actually see our factory on the map now, we can see all three of our factories, well, four technically if you count this one on the map. I have a problem because even though the money is flowing in pretty steadily, if I want to basically copy paste this factory, I'm going to need 200k almost, and that's not even counting all the extractors are going to need to supply this. So I think we need more money, and honestly that's probably something, if you're going to play this yourself, you should think about this early as possible, because I've been kind of expanding in a vertical direction, building on top of what I already have, but I actually think this game intends you to do it more in a horizontal direction. Basically build a factory, a simple factory, copy paste that, and then expand one of those factories, and then build another one of those, and kind of do that in a horizontal way, if that makes any sense, in order to make sure you have a steady inflow of both resources as well as income. Anyway, let's see where that takes us next. So let's take a quick look at the technology tree. We still need more iron gears. We're going to need an infinite amount of these pretty much. I'm already at the 20k tier and we're already halfway into that. So this is actually going to be pretty awesome. It's actually a 20% upgrade from this point on. It used to be 10, but we just got 20. We're going to get another 20 pretty soon, so that's really nice. We have almost completed the robotic arm upgrade from the computers that we're now producing. As you can see, 200 actually takes a little while. What is this? This is going to require steel. I still don't know what I would use storage for, but anyway, probably more importantly, we have a couple of upgrades here. We have the furnace upgrade, which is going to be really useful, and we need a lot of heat sinks for that, so that might be a nice next target. We need more computers for the machine shop upgrade as well. We're already producing that. What do we have over here? The gold vault that we already unlocked, and we have the steel production, which is actually going to give us the forge, as well as unlock a graphite and steel for us. So that's going to be interesting. Okay, so time to do some optimization. I really want this furnace upgrade, so that means we're going to need to mass produce heat sinks for a moment, because otherwise we won't get this anytime soon. In the meanwhile, hopefully we'll also get the machine shop upgrade, so we can actually make use of that. And then I think the next step should be to include the steel production in our existing factory, but not from resources we are already producing, but make it completely new. So we're adding to the facility and making sure we get more money as a result as well. Actually, let me see, what else do we need? We actually need steel for the next upgrade over here. We need graphite, which is a part of the steel production for batteries. And in order to unlock concrete, we're actually going to need sand as well as steel. And that's actually interesting, because we are of course already producing sand, but we're also using said sand. So again, we should probably add some of that to our production line in order to make sure we're actually getting some of that into research as well. Well, we do have a small problem, because actually I already tapped into all of this copper ore over here that we're using for our main factory. And the next closest copper ore is all the way out there. That's going to be a little bit of a belt. Honestly, building long belts in this game is actually pretty easy. So that's a thing it has going for it as well. Yeah, I think I'll just stick to the plan and build it over here. But I wouldn't blame you if you built a specific heatsink facility right over there next to the copper. But it gets so messy with all of these small facilities all around. So I'm going to see and try to keep it tidy if I can. Now, I do have to say that actually building logistic lines across long distances, especially if you've actually already done it once, it's pretty simple, because you don't need to build the tunnels all over again. You can just copy paste the line that you have that has the shape you want. And then of course I do need to make some small adjustments, but I can just hook everything up. It's actually going to take a little while for all my materials to get from the one side to the map to the other, but then again, once this is up and running, there's a non-stop flow coming in. Is the second line already getting close? Not really, but it's on its way. And there we go with our first heat sinks in production. Well, not the first ones, at least the first one of this main line of it. We are going to have to check out steel. I also, by the way, made sure that we are using the overflow of silicon production, because we're actually not using all of that in the previous build. just to make sure that's just flowing out of the system and also going on the same belt. It's a bit of a weird belt, but it's actually going all the way over here, right into this research lab that is also taking care of our computers and our surplus of other items. So just to make sure we're not wasting any research or gold in this case. Now, let's check out the new recipes that we have. Both of them are actually created in the forge. This is the new building, and graphite is made from coal and wood log. So the raw coal and the processed, well, that's actually the raw wood as well. So that's going to make graphite. And then we're going to make steel out of graphite and some iron ore. So this is interesting. These are actually all from raw resources. And then we process them twice and we have steel. So this is actually going to give us a lot of extra gold income as well if we do this right. Okay, I feel a little bit stupid, but I should probably tell you this because you might make the same mistake. I've been building all of these underground belts manually for hours by now. And it turns out you can actually just do this. Yeah, I know, it just builds the underground tunnels all by itself. No bridges or tunneling required, no manual labor, whatever. Kind of like in Dyson Sphere, the belts just jump over each other. In this case, they jump under each other, but it does it all by itself. So again, quality of light right there. Okay, so this little layout of 6 of these forges are going to produce us around 80 graphite per minute. Yes, only 80, but that's already going to take us a full belt of coal and a full belt of wood. And then on top of that, we're going to make steel, and actually we're also going to produce 80 steel per minute. And in order for that to actually work, we're going to need all of these materials, but we're also going to need 480 iron ore per minute. So that's basically 2 full belts of iron ore. Okay then, that was a little bit more complicated than I expected because, well, actually we need quite a few of these buildings, but that's not the complicated part. We need to somehow feed in the graphite, and then you need a boatload of iron ore to supplement that in order to make the actual steel. So I needed to... Basically, I skipped the second tier of production buildings in order to have enough room to fit in the steel tier, including all of the in and outputs. So I'm bringing in some of the iron ore from this side. I'm also bringing some around on this side. So it's kind of a self-contained facility. All of this is making the steel. So from that perspective, it actually looks kind of nice. Although honestly, looking at it now, I kind of want to move this to the middle and make it more symmetric. You know, something like this. And then, let's see, we actually need to spread all of these resources between all of these buildings. And especially with the iron, that's not entirely trivial. So you can see a nice little layout of splitters, tunnels, and stuff like that in order to make sure it doesn't only look organized, but we actually get all the resources divided across these buildings in an equal manner. Because although we have 2 full belts, we actually have 11 buildings that we need to spread things between. So by default, that means that some of the inputs need to be shared between several buildings. So this is where the merging of these 2 belts comes in, being split amongst these buildings in the middle. So yeah, we are now mass producing steel. Let me see, what are we unlocking? Well, we're working towards a statue. That's awesome. What else? We're almost next to ready for the next upgrade on the storage. Again, not really useful, but more importantly, we are halfway to getting concrete done. We also had made some pretty decent progress towards batteries. We actually need more graphite for that. And we're going to need quite a few more items of steel for the industrial factory upgrade. Now, that means that for now, the next target should be the sand, so we can get working on that concrete. Luckily, sand is really straightforward. Actually, we only need a couple of workshops doing that to supply an entire belt of sand, as you can see. And this is all going into a slightly reorganized research lab here in the middle. And honestly, this is starting to look like an actual facility. And just look at this monster of a main bus incoming with raw resources splitting all over the factory. Yep, I'm really, really enjoying this. Now, that means that we should now have enough sand coming in at least soon, because it hasn't actually reached the research lab yet, but there we go. We should have concrete up and running in no time, and we actually have another thing that we can build, namely batteries. So let's unlock that. We're going to unlock the industrial factory upgrade as well. It just makes life a little bit easier. And in a moment, we'll be able to add concrete to that as well. Okay, so let's see, what do we need for batteries? We actually need electromagnets as well as some more graphite, and we are actually already making those, well, not enough of those, but we are already making some of these electromagnets over here. We actually need an insane amount of copper for that, so I'm actually thinking maybe we should make a separate base specifically for batteries, because we're going to need a lot of copper for that, and we do have a lot of copper over here on the top. Also, as several of you have pointed out, this machine shop that I built in one of the first episodes actually doesn't do anything because I'm only feeding it with these plates and there's not actually wood frames coming in. So let's remove this one out of its misery. Let's put it like this, something like this, so at least this plate production is going somewhere. Now, actually looking at this, I'm wondering if I actually should bother using the higher tier buildings, at least in the cases of this, because honestly, upgrading the furnaces to tier 3 makes them a lot more efficient, but we are not really lacking any space. I'm actually wondering if I would make a similar setup as we've been doing over here, but just using the basic buildings, if for whatever reason that's actually a problem other than just costing a little bit more space. I can't actually think of a reason why it would be, and it might actually look good, so let's give it a try. So I'm actually thinking this might be a good location. We have a lot of copper nearby here. We are already using some of this to get some income, but we might be able to leech off that. We also have the wood and the coal that we need in order to build the batteries. And I'm thinking just to go for a very simple layout. I'm going to keep this particular factory as simple as I can keep it. No fancy things with coal energy and things like that. Just seeing if we keep it to the basics, how easy or hard that actually makes things. Well, there we go. We have some additional income. The other belt of copper is incoming soon. And as someone actually pointed out in the comments in one of my previous episodes, you can actually select all these buildings, then press tab and then upgrade them all at once. That makes a lot more sense than what I've been doing, building them one by one or copy pasting the higher tier ones. You can actually just upgrade them very easily like this. Okay, so we have the copper. Now we're going to need some coal and we're going to need some wood. And there we go, the wood and the coal is both needed to make the graphite over here. And we actually also need a little bit of iron, so this is where this last bunch of furnaces comes in. Now, you might actually be wondering how I'm determining this. I actually just made my own spreadsheet with the calculation of what you need for each tier of buildings. And basically what I'm trying to do is make a layout such that I'm using full belts of resources as much as possible in a perfect ratio manner. So in this case we have 3 full belts of copper, we have 1 full belt of wood, we actually have 1 full belt of coal as well because it's a 1-to-1 ratio. The only thing we don't have a full belt of is the iron ore. We're using about 2/3 of a belt, and by a belt I meant the original 240 per minute that I could put on the belt. Then I just upgraded it, so now I can actually have a little bit more on my belts, but yeah, for now that will be fine. This is actually only going to produce 10 batteries per minute, so not that much, even though we have all these resources coming in. Now let's scale this up to the next few tiers. And there we go, we have 2 belts full of wire in production now, and combined with the iron ingots, that makes the electromagnets. So yeah, all good. As you can see, nothing wrong with just using the base buildings, and now all we need to add in is some machine shops to make the batteries. And there we go, now we have batteries in production, and honestly I'm not entirely sure what I prefer. I mean, this is a very straightforward way of building, it's actually really fast as well, but now it feels like I'm not already doing anything with my gold. So let's compare. You can either do this with the basic buildings, or this with the upgraded ones. Which should you use? Honestly, I don't know. I could make an argument for either way, but honestly, these buildings do look a little bit more advanced, so maybe for the look and feel, you should go for this direction. I don't know. But what I do know is that we're going to need a lot of concrete because this is actually used in several of the next unlocks. Luckily, the concrete production is going to be really easy to make because all we need is sand and steel rods. Well, we already have sand production over here because that's what we initially built in order to unlock this. And we are also going to be able to really easily produce the steel rods because they're produced from steel, and we already have steel production up and running here. And here you go, this is actually all we need to revamp this sand and steel production into some concrete. We're actually producing slightly more of these steel rods than we're needing for the concrete, so this is why this belt is actually looping around. And we actually do need quite a bit of these steel rods for some unlocks as well. I actually think we're going to need a whole lot more than that, because the next thing up is motors. We're going to need rotors for that, electric motors, and for anyone who ever played Satisfactory, you know, you're going to need a lot of steel for all of this. So I'm probably going to have to duplicate this entire section of the facility, and even though this isn't a particularly large part of the facility, as you can see, we actually need quite a bit of resources to feed all of that. So let's get on it. And there you go, we have another 27 steel rods per minute being produced over here, because this is simply a duplicate of the build that we already had for the concrete. Now, because I'm an idiot, I also copied in the sand production over here, which we currently don't have a use for, but I'm sure we're going to need sand for something in the future anyway. At the very least, it's additional income production. It's a good thing we built all that steel rod production as well, because we're going to need a lot of steel rods in order to produce rotors, which we now have unlocked. We're also going to need iron plating for that, so that means we need to find yet another source of iron. Okay, that wasn't all that bad. We actually only needed half a belt of iron in order to make enough plates to feed them into the machine shops over here in order to make the rotors that we're now producing, which means we are now good to go to start producing some electric motors. Now, the electric motors and all are nice. We need some iron gears for that, no problem, and some rotors and some batteries, so nothing we haven't already produced. There's just one problem with that. The batteries are literally on the other side of the map. There's nothing really stopping us from making a belt all the way across the map. I'm just wondering if it isn't more efficient to actually just replicate this facility on this side of the map. At the same time, however, that's not really a problem, because in the meanwhile our rotors will start working towards some of the upgrades that we need. So the robotic arm upgrade, you know, those robotic arms that we're barely using, as well as the industrial factory upgrade that also requires 1000 of these things. So there's a couple of reasons why you might want to actually just take it slower rather than quickly, just because you're going to need some of these resources for your upgrades anyway. If at this point you're like typing in the comments telling me what an idiot I am, you're probably right, because I quickly realized that rather than transporting the batteries from one side of the map to the other, this choice actually resulted in me having to transfer about a dozen completely full belts of resources all the way on the other side of the map, because I'm kind of running out of resources on the map. The copper is coming from over here, over here, over here, because we need a lot of copper for this. I actually dismantled the starting facility here just to keep my sanity from not having to transport even more resources from the other side of the map. I'm also drawing of this coal, of this iron, So basically I have about half the resources on the map now completely tapped. However, that said, and that's the reason why I continued, even though I did realize this while I was building it fairly early on, it kind of looks really neat and organized. We have all of these facilities now closely together, all of these resources coming together in one central facility. It just looks really nice, so my OCD required me to continue. So we're producing the batteries here now. It's basically the same facility as we have on top of the map, just a little bit more neatly organized and duplicated twice because we needed some more batteries. I also have a facility over here, a tiny little facility that's actually overproducing some of these gears. We need some gears for the actual motors, but we also have the gears, of course, going into the belt upgrade, so might as well just produce a full belt of them. And then everything is actually dumped on this belt over here. We actually don't have a full belt of gears because otherwise that would be a problem, but the full belt of iron is actually transformed into half a belt full of gears. Then that is combined with a small trickle of batteries from this facility and this facility. And then if we follow that all the way to the right, it is combined with the rotor production over here. And then we have some of these robotic arms. Yes, the upgraded version, not that we need it to be upgraded, but might as well use them if we have them. And that is being transformed into these tiny little motors. Now, all of that is, of course, then feeding into this research lab over here, which is honestly kind of looking awesome now with all of these different resources coming together in here. All of the resources produced in this entire facility are coming together in this research lab. And that means we're now on our way to actually upgrade the extractors, which is going to cause a new problem because every single extractor that I currently have built is the tier 3 one, and simply upgrading them is not going to work because the belts can't actually handle a full upgrade of all of that, nor can my facilities. So we're going to have to deal with that, but I think that's going to be part of the next episode. So if you're still here, you're awesome, and I do hope to catch you in the next one, because I do intend to complete the entire remainder of the technology tree in that one. Will I make it? Well, let's find out.